Millionaire CEO, took his twins on a blind date, pretended to be broke. Everything changed when she... Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. It all began on a gray Saturday morning in a quiet neighborhood outside Chicago. The rain had not stopped since dawn, washing the streets in silver light. Inside a small diner that smelled of coffee and pancakes, a man sat at the corner booth with two restless children. His name was Lucas Grant. To everyone around him, he looked like an ordinary single father struggling to keep his kids entertained. No one could tell that the man who wiped syrup off the table was, in truth, the chief executive officer of Grant Enterprises, one of the largest private tech companies in the country. That morning, Lucas wore a faded denim jacket, the knees of his jeans frayed, his hair slightly tousled. He had left his designer watch at home. Across from him, his 6-year-old twins, Eli and Emma, argued over who got the last blueberry pancake. "Daddy, you promised 2 each," Emma pouted. Lucas smiled, cutting the pancake in half. "Sharing makes it taste better," he said softly. He was not here for breakfast. He was here for a test. 2 nights earlier, a friend had convinced him to try a blind date. The woman, he was told, was kind, genuine, and not the type to care about money. Lucas, still scarred by a marriage built on status, had agreed but with one condition. She would meet Lucas, the broke widower, not Lucas Grant, the millionaire chief executive officer. The bell above the diner door chimed. A young woman stepped in, shaking the rain from her coat. Her hair clung to her cheeks, and her eyes carried a quiet exhaustion, the kind that came from too many double shifts and not enough sleep. She scanned the room, then froze when she saw the twins waving at her from the booth. "You must be Miss Carter," Lucas said, standing politely. "Mia Carter?" She nodded, surprised. "Yes, you are Lucas, and these must be your little ones." Eli grinned. "We are twins, and we like pancakes." Mia laughed, her voice light but warm. She slid into the booth beside them, unwrapping her scarf. "Then we already have something in common," she said. Her coat was old, her shoes damp from puddles, but her presence filled the small space with brightness. Lucas noticed the way she spoke to the children first, not to him the way she listened to them with her full attention. "So, you work at a school?" he asked. "Yes," she said. "I teach kindergarten at St. Mary's Community School. The pay is not much, but the kids, they make every day worth it." Lucas smiled, stirred by her sincerity. "That sounds important." Mia shrugged, a faint blush rising to her cheeks. "I do not know about important, but it feels right. Sometimes I think the smallest acts can change a life." He studied her quietly. For a moment, the noise of the diner faded, the clatter of dishes, the hiss of the coffee maker. There was something about her words that reached the part of him that money could not touch. Outside, thunder rolled again. Emma shivered. Without hesitation, Mia took off her scarf and draped it around the girl's shoulders. "You need this more than I do," she said. Lucas felt something tighten in his chest. Kindness like that could not be faked. He reached for the check, but Mia stopped him. "Please," she said, "let me. You already paid for breakfast." Maybe next time," Lucas said softly, smiling. As she left the diner, the twins waved from the window. Lucas watched her walk away through the rain, her figure small but steady under the gray sky. He exhaled, unaware that this ordinary morning would become the turning point of his life, because the woman who had just given away her scarf would soon be the one to teach him what love without disguise truly means. The next morning, the rain had stopped, leaving the streets of Chicago shining under a pale sky. The city looked clean but distant, as if it had washed away every trace of warmth. Mia Carter walked quickly down the sidewalk, her coffee cooling in her hand, her mind still replaying yesterday's strange encounter at the diner. She had met kind people before, but there was something different about that father and his 2 children. Something quiet, something sad. She shook the thought away as she reached the school gate. St. Mary's Community School stood like a tired old friend, its red bricks darkened by the rain, its windows glowing faintly with the laughter of children. Mia took a deep breath and stepped inside. Her class was already awake with energy. "Miss Carter! Miss Carter!" the children shouted as she walked in. She smiled, hanging her coat and scarf. "Good morning, everyone. Let us start with our morning song." The routine steadied her heart. Teaching had always been her safe place, a world small enough to manage, even when the rest of life was slipping through her fingers. She had not paid rent in 2 weeks. Her sister's medical bills were waiting on the kitchen counter, and her paycheck would not arrive for another 5 days. But none of that showed on her face as she knelt beside little Olivia to help her tie her shoes. At lunchtime, while the children ate, Mia sat by the window with a paper sandwich and a used sketchbook she carried everywhere. Inside were drawings her students had made, all about kindness. One page showed a tall man with messy hair, holding 2 children's hands. She smiled faintly. The twins. She still remembered the way they looked at their father, the same way she once looked at hers, before he passed. Meanwhile, across the city, Lucas Grant sat behind the wheel of his black pickup truck, one of the few normal things he still owned. He had driven by the school 3 times already. Each time, he told himself he was only checking to make sure Mia got there safely. But deep down, he knew it was more than that. Something about her had unsettled the careful walls he had built. His phone buzzed. "Lucas, the board meeting starts in 20 minutes, his assistant reminded him. He hesitated, looking toward the school building through the windshield. He could see children playing in the yard, their laughter floating through the air. For a man who lived in glass towers, that sound felt like sunlight. "Reschedule," he said finally. "Tell them I will call in later." He turned off the engine and leaned back, wondering what it would be like to live without lies, without pretending to be someone else. Later that afternoon, as the clouds rolled back in, Mia finished her shift and walked toward the bus stop. The wind had picked up again. When the first drops began to fall, she heard a familiar voice behind her. "You forgot your scarf." She turned and froze. Lucas was there, holding out the same faded scarf she had given to his daughter the day before. His twins stood beside him, holding paper umbrellas painted with crooked hearts. "They wanted to bring it back," Lucas said. "They said it was yours." Mia smiled softly. "Thank you, but I am glad she wore it. I would rather see it keeping someone warm." The children grinned. "Daddy said you are very kind." Mia laughed, touched by their innocence. "Your daddy gives me too much credit." Lucas looked at her, eyes calm but searching. "Would you maybe join us for a walk? The park is nearby, and the kids need to stretch their legs." She hesitated. She had work to grade, a bus to catch, a life to hold together. But something in his tone, gentle, uncertain, almost shy, made her nod. "All right, just for a little while." They walked through the park, the twins chasing puddles, their laughter echoing against the trees. For the first time in a long time, Mia felt something lift from her chest. Lucas glanced at her as she laughed, her hair blowing across her face, and thought, "She does not see my money, my name, or my past. She just sees me." As the sun dipped behind the clouds, the twins ran ahead, and for a brief, fragile moment, they looked like a family. None of them knew that this simple walk, the sound of children's laughter, the warmth of a borrowed scarf, the spark of trust, was the thread that would tie their worlds together long before the truth came out. The following week unfolded quietly, yet something inside Mia began to shift. Each afternoon, when her last class ended, she found herself glancing at the front gate of St. Mary's Community School, half expecting to see Lucas and his twins again. Sometimes they were there, waving from across the street with paper cups of hot chocolate. Other times, only the memory of their laughter lingered, warming her on the long bus ride home. Life was still difficult. The rent notice had turned into a final warning, her sister's medicine was running out, and the nights were getting colder. But for reasons she could not explain, hope no longer felt so distant. There was kindness in the world, and she had seen it reflected in 2 small faces. One Thursday evening, as the last children were picked up, the school principal called Mia into the office. "Miss Carter," he began gently, "we have a new volunteer for the afternoon security shift. You may have noticed him, Mr. Grant." Mia blinked. "Lucas?" The principal nodded. "Yes. He offered to help while he looks for more permanent work. He said his children attend our after-school program. Seems like a good man. Outside the office, she found him near the playground, wearing a simple uniform shirt and holding a set of keys. Eli and Emma ran around him, pretending the slide was a rocket ship. Lucas turned when he saw her. "Hey," he said, smiling. "Do you mind if I keep an eye on your class for a bit? The kids seem to like me." She smiled back, surprised. "You are full of surprises, Lucas. Most parents barely pick up their kids on time. Maybe I just like being here," he said softly. In the following days, he became part of their little world. He fixed the squeaky gate, painted over graffiti, and brought warm muffins for the teachers on cold mornings. Mia watched him blend in effortlessly, never boasting, never standing apart. He helped with small things, changing light bulbs, carrying boxes, kneeling beside children to tie shoes. To everyone, he was just a kind father doing his best. But Mia sensed something deeper beneath his calm eyes. When she asked about his past, he always smiled and said, "It is a long story, maybe for another time." One afternoon, as the wind scattered red and gold leaves across the playground, Mia found the twins drawing with crayons on a bench. "Look, Miss Carter," Eli exclaimed, holding up his picture. It showed a big blue sky and 4 stick figures, 2 small ones, 1 tall, and 1 with long hair. "That is you," he said proudly. "You are part of our family picture." Mia laughed, touched beyond words. "That is the most beautiful drawing I have ever seen." She noticed a small detail at the bottom of the page. Written in shaky letters were the words, "Eli and Emma, Daddy's Dream." The same phrase was carved into the wooden pencil Lucas always carried in his pocket. It looked hand-etched, old but cared for. She realized it was something precious to him, a keepsake of love and memory. When Lucas came to pick them up, she mentioned it. "That phrase on their drawings, it is lovely. Did you come up with it?" He hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "My wife used to say it, before she passed. The kids believe that as long as I keep that pencil, she is still watching over us." "Oh," Mia's voice softened. "That is beautiful, Lucas." He smiled faintly, but there was pain behind it. "She was the only person who ever saw me for who I was, not what I had. Sometimes I wonder if anyone else ever will." The words lingered in Mia's chest long after he left. She had no idea what he truly meant, or how close she was to finding out. That night, Lucas sat at his kitchen table, the twins asleep upstairs. He turned the carved pencil over in his hands, tracing the worn letters with his thumb. It was the last thing his late wife had given him, a promise to raise their children with honesty and heart. But here he was, living behind a lie again. He had told himself it was harmless a way to protect the twins, to test the world's sincerity. Yet each day he spent with Mia, the lie grew heavier. He whispered to the empty room, "How do I tell her the truth without losing her?" The wind brushed against the window, and for a moment, it sounded like an answer he could not yet hear. Back in her apartment, Mia sat beside her sleeping sister, a single lamp glowing on the nightstand. She opened her sketchbook and drew a small pencil with the words, "Daddy's Dream." Beneath it, she added a single line. "Sometimes, dreams begin with kindness." Neither of them knew it yet, but that pencil, simple, ordinary, fragile, would soon become the key to everything that followed. 2 weeks later, the chill of early November crept into the city. The trees outside St. Mary's Community School had already shed their leaves, and the sky hung low with the promise of snow. Inside the classroom, Mia was helping the children hang paper stars for the upcoming winter charity fair. Her hands smelled faintly of glue and cinnamon from the craft table. It felt like an ordinary Thursday until she saw Lucas standing at the door with 2 cups of cocoa and a hesitant smile. "Peace offering," he said, handing her one. "You look like you could use something warm." Mia took the cup, her fingers brushing his. "Thank you. The kids will love this fair. They have been talking about it for days." Lucas glanced around the classroom. "It is amazing what you do here. I did not realize how much effort teachers give outside of class." "Oh," she laughed softly. "Effort is easy when you love them, but we are short on supplies this year. The funding was cut." He looked thoughtful. "Maybe I can help," he said quickly, then caught himself. "I mean, maybe I can ask around for donations." "That would be wonderful," she replied, smiling. "But only if it is not too much trouble." That weekend, Lucas and the twins returned with boxes of paint, paper, and lights. When the other teachers asked how he managed to find them, he simply shrugged. A friend owed me a favor. In truth, his assistant had arranged everything from one of his company's storage facilities. In the days that followed, their connection grew quietly. Lucas often stayed after school to fix decorations or clean brushes. The twins adored Mia, following her everywhere like ducklings. She laughed more now, something her colleagues noticed immediately. One Friday evening, as they were closing up the classroom, the power flickered out. The sudden darkness startled her. "Oh no, not again. The wiring in this building is ancient." Lucas used the light from his phone to find her. "Stay still," he said. "I will check the fuse box." But as he reached the door, the sound of thunder rolled outside, and the rain began again. They ended up sitting by the window with a small lantern, the children already home with another teacher. For a moment, it felt like the world had slowed down. "You know," Mia said quietly, "I used to think happiness was something huge like owning a house or traveling the world. But lately, it feels smaller. Maybe it is just someone showing up when you least expect it." Lucas looked at her, his eyes softening. Sometimes showing up is the hardest thing to do. Silence filled the space between them, comfortable and fragile. Then, from the hallway, came the faint sound of a child crying. Lucas stood quickly. "That sounded like Emma." Mia frowned. "She went home with Eli earlier." They followed the sound to the gym, where they found Emma sitting on the steps, her tiny shoulders trembling. The other teacher had dropped her off, thinking Lucas was still nearby. Without hesitation, Mia knelt and wrapped her arms around the little girl. "Hey, sweetheart. You are safe. We are here." Lucas's breath caught. The sight of Mia comforting his daughter struck something deep within him, a warmth he had not felt in years. When Emma calmed, she reached out her small hand toward Mia. "Can you come to our house tomorrow? We are baking cookies." Mia smiled. "Only if your dad says it is okay." Lucas hesitated, then nodded slowly. "I think that can be arranged." The next afternoon, she arrived at their modest apartment. It was simple, but full of light. The twins pulled her into the kitchen, their laughter echoing off the walls. Flour dusted her hair, chocolate smudged her fingers, and for the first time in years, Lucas's home felt alive. Later, when the children went to bed, Mia stood by the window. "You are a good father, Lucas," she said. "They adore you." He joined her, his voice low. "I just want them to grow up believing people can be kind." Outside, snow began to fall for the first time that winter. She turned to him, smiling. "Then you are already doing it right." Neither of them realized it yet. But this quiet evening, the scent of cookies, the glow of falling snow, the sound of soft laughter was the moment their hearts began to shift. The pretense of a stranger's kindness was becoming something real. Snow blanketed the city in a thin white layer the following morning. The world outside felt quiet, almost new. Mia woke up smiling, the scent of chocolate still clinging to her hair from the evening before. For once, she did not feel the weight of unpaid bills or long hours. She felt peaceful. At Grant Enterprises, however, peace was rare. Lucas sat in a glass-walled conference room, dressed again in his tailored suit, the mask of wealth back in place. His board of directors was arguing over the upcoming Winter Gala, the company's biggest charity event. One of them, a sharp man named Thomas Hale, leaned forward. "You have been absent too often lately, Lucas. People are beginning to talk." Rumors spread fast when a chief executive officer disappears into the suburbs. Lucas's jaw tightened. "I needed time with my family," he said simply. Thomas smirked. "Family or not, investors expect to see results, not excuses. You will be at the gala, yes?" Lucas nodded. "Of course." When the meeting ended, he looked out over the skyline and sighed. The truth he had been hiding from Mia suddenly felt heavier than ever. She still thought he was a struggling single father, but in just 1 week, she would see him on the stage of that gala introduced as the host, the millionaire behind every donation. There would be no hiding after that. That evening, he stopped by St. Mary's Community School to drop off a box of supplies for the charity fair. Mia met him at the door, cheeks rosy from the cold. "You did not have to bring this yourself," she said. "I wanted to," he replied. The kids deserve a good event. Inside, they decorated together. Paper lanterns, strings of lights, laughter echoing through the hall. When a teacher passed by, she whispered to Mia, "You are lucky." A man like that is rare. Mia's face warmed. He is just a friend. But as she glanced at Lucas across the room, arranging the lanterns with the twins, she knew just a friend no longer felt true. The night of the fair arrived. The gymnasium glowed with color. Parents and children filled the space, their joy bright enough to chase away winter's chill. Lucas helped at the ticket booth while Mia directed the children's choir. The twins waved from the front row, proud to see both of them there. After the final song, Lucas stepped forward with a surprise announcement. On behalf of a private donor, I would like to cover the cost of the school's new art supplies for next semester. Applause erupted. Mia's eyes widened. A private donor? She asked softly. He smiled. Someone who believes in you. The words made her heart flutter. Yet somewhere inside, she wondered who could give so generously to a small community school. Later, as everyone cleaned up, Thomas Hale arrived unannounced, his expensive coat dripping snow onto the floor. "Lucas," he called across the room, his tone sharp. "We need to discuss your guest list for the gala." Mia looked up, startled. "Gala?" Thomas's gaze shifted to her. "Ah. You must be the teacher he has been spending all his time with." His smirk was cruel. "I am sure you will enjoy seeing the real Lucas next weekend. He will be on stage, of course, our shining chief executive officer." The color drained from her face. She turned toward Lucas, searching his eyes for denial, for an explanation. He opened his mouth to speak, but she shook her head, the hurt already forming like frost. "Is it true?" she whispered. "Mia, please," he said softly. "I wanted to tell you. I just needed time." But the words came too late. She stepped back, her voice trembling. "You were never honest with me. I thought you were different." And before he could say another word, she walked out into the snow, leaving the lights of the fair fading behind her, and the sound of the twins calling her name echoing in the cold night. The snowstorm that night seemed endless. Wind howled through the city, shaking windows and blurring the world into a single sheet of white. Mia walked aimlessly down the street, her scarf pulled tight around her neck, her breath fogging the air. Her heart felt heavier than the winter sky. Every word, every laugh she had shared with Lucas now felt like part of a carefully built illusion. Back in his apartment, Lucas sat motionless on the couch. The twins had fallen asleep, their drawings scattered across the floor. He looked at one of them, a stick figure of him, Mia, and the children holding hands under a rainbow. Beneath it, Eli had written, "Our family." Lucas felt the ache deepen in his chest. He whispered to the empty room, "I never meant to hurt her." The following morning, the headlines hit the business news. Grant Enterprises to host annual charity gala. Chief Executive Officer Lucas Grant to donate $5 million for children's education. His face was everywhere, on screens, on billboards, even on the morning news that played in the teacher's lounge at St. Mary's Community School. Mia turned the volume down and walked out. Her colleagues called after her, but she could not bear to hear his name again. She spent the rest of the day in silence, teaching on autopilot, her smile a fragile mask. When dismissal came, she stayed late to clean the classroom. On a desk near the window, she found a paper snowflake that one of the twins had left behind. In the center was a small heart drawn in blue crayon. It broke her. At the same time, Lucas was preparing for the gala. His assistant briefed him on speeches and camera angles, but his thoughts kept drifting back to Mia. "Do you think she will come?" he asked quietly. His assistant hesitated. "Sir, after what happened, I doubt it." That night, the ballroom of the Grand Meridian Hotel sparkled with light. Chandeliers glowed above tables covered in silver linen. The city's wealthiest guests gathered in glittering gowns and tailored tuxedos. Cameras flashed as reporters whispered about Lucas Grant's mysterious disappearance from the corporate scene and his rumored connection to a schoolteacher. When Lucas walked on stage, applause filled the room. He took the microphone, but for a moment, he could not speak. His gaze swept over the crowd and stopped near the entrance. Mia had just arrived, standing uncertainly at the doorway, still wearing her simple winter coat. She looked out of place among the polished guests, but to him, she was the only person who mattered. "This event," he began slowly, "is about honesty, about giving without expecting anything in return." His voice steadied as he continued. "I spent years believing that success meant power, that generosity was a performance. But recently, I met someone who reminded me that true kindness does not need to be seen. It only needs to be felt. The audience fell silent. Mia's eyes glistened. I owe that person an apology, he said. I hid behind a false identity because I was afraid. I thought I had to pretend to be less than I was to earn something real. But the truth is, she already saw the real me before the lies. Murmurs spread through the crowd, cameras flashing again. Mia turned away, tears burning behind her eyes, and slipped out into the corridor before he could finish. Outside, snow was falling again, soft and relentless. Lucas followed her into the cold night, his voice breaking the silence. Mia, please, wait. She stopped, but did not turn. You had every chance to tell me, she said. All I ever wanted was honesty. I know, he whispered, and I failed you, but I swear, nothing I felt for you was fake. The wind carried his words away. She looked at him one last time, her expression caught between love and disappointment. Then she walked into the snow, leaving him standing there beneath the streetlight, the glow of the gala fading behind him, and the world colder than ever before. Days passed after the gala, and the city returned to its usual rhythm, but nothing felt the same. Mia carried on with her classes at St. Mary's Community School, her voice steady, her smile polite. Yet every evening she walked home in silence. She told herself it was foolish to care. Men like Lucas Grant belonged to a world she would never understand, a world built on wealth, promises, and headlines. Still, the memory of his voice lingered, the sincerity in his apology echoing louder than the applause that followed. She wanted to hate him, but she could not. What hurt most was that he had hidden the truth not to deceive, but because he feared that honesty would cost him love. One afternoon, she stopped by a small cafe near the bus stop. The same diner where they had first met was closed for renovations, so she sat by the window of this one, staring out at the snow melting on the sidewalk. A soft voice startled her. "Miss Carter." She turned. Eli and Emma stood there, clutching a folded piece of paper. Behind them was their nanny, who gave a polite nod before stepping aside. Eli handed her the paper. "Daddy said to give you this. He said it is not to ask for forgiveness. It is just something you should know." "Oh." Her hands trembled slightly as she opened it. Inside was a letter written in neat, careful handwriting. "Mia, I understand if you never wish to see me again. But I want you to know that what began as a test of kindness became something real. You once told me that happiness is when someone shows up when you least expect it. You did that for me. You changed what I believe in. The school will receive a permanent grant under your name. It is the least I can do for what you taught me about truth. With all my heart, Lucas." By the time she looked up, the twins had already run back to the car waiting outside. She folded the letter carefully and held it to her chest, unsure whether to cry or smile. That night, Lucas stood in his office, overlooking the city skyline. The lights glittered below, but for the first time, he saw no meaning in them. His assistant entered quietly. "Sir, the foundation transfer was completed. The St. Mary's Grant Fund is active." Lucas nodded, his voice low. "Good. Make sure it stays that way, no matter what happens next." He glanced at the framed drawing on his desk, the one his children had made, showing him and Mia under the rainbow. He touched the words at the bottom. "Daddy's dream." "I guess some dreams," he murmured, "are meant to hurt before they heal." Outside, the city snow began to fall again, soft and slow, as if the sky itself was whispering for a second chance. Winter deepened, and with it came a quiet sense of distance. Mia continued teaching, focusing on her students and the new art supplies that had arrived from the grant. The children's laughter filled the classroom again, and though she never mentioned his name, every new crayon and brush reminded her of Lucas. His letter remained folded in her desk drawer, worn from the time she had read it and promised herself not to. One afternoon, as she was preparing lesson plans, the principal rushed in. "Miss Carter, you should see this," he said, turning on the television in the lounge. The news headline scrolled across the screen. "Attempted corporate takeover at Grant Enterprises. Chief Executive Officer resigns to protect foundation funds." Mia froze. The reporter continued, explaining that a senior executive named Thomas Hale had been caught transferring company assets. Lucas had discovered the scheme, but refused to expose the full scandal to the media, choosing instead to step down to safeguard the employees and the charity foundation he had created. Her chest tightened. The foundation, her school's funding, was part of what he had fought to protect. Without thinking, She grabbed her coat and rushed out into the cold. Across town, Lucas was packing the last of his files into a cardboard box. The office felt strangely quiet without the usual hum of voices. His assistant stood nearby, regret heavy in her eyes. "You did the right thing, sir," she said softly. He smiled faintly. Sometimes the right thing costs more than money. As he left the building, flashes from cameras lit up the street. Reporters shouted questions, but he kept walking, his breath visible in the icy air. A familiar voice called out behind him, "Lucas!" He turned, startled. Mia stood at the edge of the crowd, snow clinging to her hair. She looked the same, simple, strong, and heartbreakingly real. "You did not have to do this," she said, her voice trembling. "You could have protected your position." He shook his head. "I could not protect both the company and what mattered most. The foundation helps your students. That is worth everything." Mia stepped closer. "You lost everything because of me." "No," he said quietly. "I found something because of you." For a moment, the noise of the city faded, and there was only the two of them, standing in falling snow. The crowd and the cameras no longer mattered. She looked into his eyes, searching for any trace of the man she had once thought was pretending. But all she saw was truth, tired, humble, and pure. He took a deep breath. "I am not asking for forgiveness. I just want you to know that I never lied about how I felt." Mia's voice softened. "Then stop standing in the cold, Lucas. Come home." "Oh." The words hung in the air, fragile and full of hope. He smiled for the first time in weeks, and as snowflakes drifted between them, it felt as if the world itself was finally exhaling. Spring arrived softly, melting away the last traces of snow that had once covered the city. The air smelled of rain and new beginnings. At St. Mary's Community School, sunlight poured through the classroom windows, warming the rows of freshly painted art tables. On the wall hung a sign that read, "Grant Foundation for Honest Hearts." Beneath it, children's drawings danced in every color of hope. Mia stood near the window, watching the students prepare for the school's first art exhibition. Their laughter filled the air as they pinned up paintings of families, rainbows, and smiles. Among the drawings was one that stood out. 4 figures holding hands beneath a bright blue sky. At the bottom were the words, "Dream complete." "Oh," she felt a gentle tap on her shoulder. When she turned, Lucas was standing there. He looked different, simpler, calmer, but his eyes carried the same warmth she had fallen in love with. "I heard there was an art show," he said, his smile faint but real. Mia nodded, her voice steady, though her heart raced. "You are always welcome here. After all, this foundation started because of you." He looked around the room, his gaze softening at the sight of the children's joy. "No," he said quietly. "It started because of you. You believed kindness could change a life. You were right." The bell rang, and the children gathered near the stage, waiting for the ceremony to begin. The principal handed Mia a small envelope. "Miss Carter, this came for you this morning. It is from the Board of Grant Enterprises." She opened it carefully. Inside was a single sheet of paper, an invitation, and a certificate. The Grant Foundation names Miss Mia Carter as Director of Educational Programs in recognition of her extraordinary compassion and integrity. Her eyes widened. Lucas smiled. "You deserve it. This was always meant to be yours." She turned to him, tears shining in her eyes. "You did not have to do this." He shook his head. "I wanted to, because love without action is just a word." Before she could reply, 2 familiar voices called from the doorway. Eli and Emma ran inside, their small hands clutching a bouquet of wildflowers. "Miss Carter, look! We picked these for you!" She knelt to hug them, her heart full. The twins giggled and handed her the flowers, their smiles brighter than the morning Sunday. Lucas watched the scene quietly. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small wooden pencil, its surface worn smooth from years of holding it close. He had glued it back together, the same pencil that once broke on the night of his confession. The words carved along its side now read, "Eli and Emma, Daddy's dream complete." He held it out to her. "I think this belongs with you now. You helped us finish the story." Mia took the pencil, her hand trembling slightly. "No, Lucas," she said softly. "We finished it together." The principal called her to the stage to begin the exhibition. Lucas stood beside the twins as the lights dimmed and a soft melody played. One by one, the children's drawings glowed under the spotlight. Families reunited, hands held, hearts mended. When it ended, the audience rose in applause. Mia turned toward Lucas, her smile full of light. He met her halfway, and the children cheered when he took her hand. Outside, spring rain began to fall again, gentle and cleansing. The camera of life seemed to pull back, revealing the school bathed in golden light, the foundation built on truth, the love that survived every lie, and two worlds no longer divided by fear or pride. For the first time, Lucas did not need to pretend to be less, and Mia no longer feared she was not enough. Together, they had found the truth, that kindness began it all, honesty healed it, and love made it whole.